Okay, hoping that the internet is good today. I've been wanting to do this for the past 2-3 days, but looks like today is the day anyway. Just guys, bear with me. I'm just inviting some people to come into the live stream, so give and take. I'll start in about 2 minutes. Yes. Hi. Thank you all. Good evening and welcome to my live stream. I've been meaning and wanting to do this for about 2-3 days, and it's just something I just wanted to share because I think I'm just, not to say I'm not going to be on social media, but I've just decided that I'm not going to deal with issues that are of national interest and needs to be lent a voice. I'm just going to take a break, and most likely a permanent break from that. I just first and foremost want to say that you don't choose, nobody chooses to be an activist. Nobody chooses to lend their voice or voices to the country or a cause. It's just a calling that it's just instinctive in a nutshell. You just don't plan it. It's just there. You just sit down, you see potholes in the road, you don't like it, you want to talk about it. You see corruption, you don't like it, you want to talk about it. You look at the Banjul project, you think things are not done the way it should be, you lend your voice to it and make it known. But when, and during the course of doing this, you're not doing it for people. You're doing it for your conviction and conscience. Your conviction and conscience, that's what propels you to do the type of things you do. Why does your conviction and conscience propel you to do these things? Because you believe society deserves better, and sometimes you believe the populace don't know better. Having said that, I've been engaged in activism for the longest time since I've known myself. And I've decided that right is right and wrong is wrong, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and that propelled 𝒂𝒑𝒔 to be active, that propelled 𝒂𝒑𝒔 to lend his voice, that propelled 𝒂𝒑𝒔 to make sure people whose voices are not heard are heard. The marginalized in our society are protected. The gangsters, economic gangsters that want to take our country to the cleaners are shamed, named, and exposed. This has been why 𝒂𝒑𝒔 was out there. It has never been a personal enterprise, meaning I never did it because I had scores to settle with people. Matter of fact, some of the people I've been hitting hard on are family members. I have blood ties with them. So it's never a personal endeavor, because the interest of the greater good, that is the interest of Gambia, supersedes my personal relationships and personal interests. So therefore, when I got up and spoke about a lot of issues, it wasn't to make enemies with people. It wasn't to harass people. It was done because that was the right and the appropriate thing to do for the Gambia. Now, having said this, or having said that, I mean, this thing has become something that has been part of me. And one thing I hate the most is when people see me out in the streets and say, Nyang, you're doing a good job. That's not why I was doing what I've been doing. I wasn't looking for commendation. I wasn't looking for people to endorse what I'm doing. I was doing it because my conscience and my conviction said that's the right thing to do. Well, since it was the right thing to do, I wanted to continue to do it. But unfortunately, we live in a society, we live in a country whereby objectivity is lacking in our public discourse. Respect is lacking in our public discourse. Civility is lacking in our public discourse. Well, Ņaņģay wants to contribute towards the furtherance of a better Gambia, but not to the detriment of his state of mind, not to the detriment of his family, and not to the detriment of his loved ones. I don't mind when the establishment blacklist me and affect me financially. That's something I can live with, because there are other doors I can open to make a living. So that's not a problem. But it starts becoming a problem when people want to stain you. It starts becoming a problem when people want to make you what you are not. Yes, people like me, I'm a tough nut. You can say a lot about me and I'll be indifferent. But no man is an island. Ņaņģay, by extension, is part of an entity, and that entity is called my family. And my family deserves respect. My family deserves a peace of mind. And unfortunately, if I live in a country whereby when you impact others, where it matters to them the most, even though they're doing wrong, they cannot come back and deal with the issues as you have presented them, but they rather make the issues personal. And even in making it personal, they cannot be factual, but they can be very, very, very dirty, very, very obnoxious. Then it gets to a point one has to decide two things: country and self. Country in the sense that the greater good of society. For the longest of time, Ņaņģay has put the greater good of society first before his personal and familial interest. And putting the greater good of society first, to me it has been ideal. To me, for the longest, I thought that was the right thing to do, because a better Gambia gives all of us a better livelihood. And for us to have a better livelihood, some of us had to sacrifice. And I never bothered to be one of those sacrificial lambs, to give space, way, opportunity, hoping that our country will emerge and emerge better. But if you're fighting, and you're not fighting for yourself, but you're fighting for a collective good, because that's what your conscience dictates, you expect that the very people you're trying to fight for, they don't have to appreciate what you're doing, but they don't have to be stumbling blocks on your way to their redemption. And now I have come to the realization that the very people we're trying to empower, the very people we're trying to enlighten, the very people we're trying to make sure that they're not being exploited, are the very people who are making the likes of me their public enemies. One, it's confusing, and two, it's demoralizing. And these are some of the reflections of a conscientious objector, someone who sees wrong, wants to fight wrong, but in the end becomes the problem for the very people he's fighting for. It's pathetic. It's shameful. And most of the time, I used to want to attribute it to ignorance out of either education or awareness. But I have come to the solemn conclusion that most, if not all, they look at a personal, narrowly defined self-interest born out of poverty. And this narrowly defined interest makes them lose their humanity, makes them lose their conscience, makes them lose their conviction and purpose of being, just for a short-term immediate gain. Short-term immediate gain meaning a bag of rice today, $500 is today, and they compromise themselves for something way better than a bag of rice or that $500 is. So it has been a pull and push for quite a while. We make gains sometimes, but sometimes also the very society we're helping drag us to the mud. And 𝒂𝒑𝒔, over the past 10 days, decided to have a solemn reflection. And this reflection is, do I want to continue under the prevailing social conditions that my country finds itself in? And after an introspective look at the situation and look at the predicament, I decided I'm going to take a back seat. It's painful. It's hurting, because I want a better Gambia, and collectively we deserve a better Gambia. But mind you, I'm using the word we, not I. So since it's we, I think we have a collective responsibility to Gambia. And after having a collective responsibility, then we will have individual accountability to the Gambia. But I think collectively we have refused to assume our collective responsibilities as Gambians. We have refused to accept our collective responsibility to the Gambia. Why am I saying that? Most, if not all of us, choose to be spectators. Most of us, we know right and wrong, but we don't want to upset the status quo. We don't want to be seen as anti-establishment. So yes, most of us will see 𝒂𝒑𝒔 in circles and say, oh, I like what you're doing. But you are not lifting your own weight. You are not carrying your own weight. And that becomes an excess dead weight cost. The Madi Jobates of the world, the 𝒂𝒑𝒔s of the world, the 𝒂𝒄𝒄𝒏𝒆𝒍 of the world cannot be carrying excess dead weight cost of the Gambian. We all need to start carrying our own weight. That's the only way we can make this place better. But no, we all have social deliverables to Gambia, but all of us want to outsource our social deliverables to the next person. Let it be the next person's problem, not my problem. But ultimately, it becomes our collective problem. And this collective problem is what has gotten us to where we are. And where we are happens to have few people who are doing the heavy lifting. And these few people oftentimes get tired of doing the heavy lifting, not because they don't want to, but it comes with its attendant problems. Every now and then you will see Madi Jobate take a back seat. He doesn't want to talk about anything Gambia. You will see a Madi Jobate go on a hiatus because he is sick and tired of just being sick and tired of talking about the same thing. Every now and then you will see Nyanjai loses his cool. It has happened, and it has happened in the past, whereby I've decided enough was enough and that was it. But activism to a point is a calling, and this calling, you just don't shift gears because you want to shift gears. You don't turn a blind eye because you want to turn a blind eye. It's just an instinct that drives your passion. This instinct has really brought me at odds with a lot of things. Like I said, it has costed me emotionally over the years. It has costed me financial opportunities over the years. It has costed me friends and families over the years, because people who don't want to upset the status quo sometimes don't even want to mingle with me in certain quarters because they don't want their favors to be cut off. Hey, you just accept it. That 1, you don't need their validation. 2, you don't need their endorsements. And 3, with or without them, life goes on. So that has been my consolation over the years. But one thing that I cannot fathom, one thing I will not accept, is when people want to inject others who are dear to me in something that, 1, they have no business with, and 2, you maligning their names. I love the people who are dear to me, and at some point a decision has to be made and a decision has to be taken, and that decision is my immediate family, their emotional well-being, or the collective good of society. I am an idealist who loves the collective good, but I have a responsibility to my immediate family, and that responsibility has prompted me to take a decision. And that decision is, from henceforth going forward, I will recuse myself from all things Gambia that has an undertone that will allow others to do things to me that I don't like and I don't deserve. So therefore, Nyanjai will just be another private citizen doing what private people do. That's what my family deserves from me, because they don't deserve heartache, especially coming from good-for-nothing people who are not going to serve this country's interests, but their narrowly defined personal interests. And having said this, I want to remind the President of few things that he needs to tidy up, because my voice will not be heard on things like this going forward any longer. And when I say any longer, I mean it. I want the President to realize that this country is at its knees because of maladministration and poor governance to begin with. And this poor governance is prompted by corruption and graft. Deliberate corruption and graft. Deliberate corruption meaning we are seeing things in this country that is blatant, that is deliberate, and that is indifferent. We cannot have a country where bad behavior is continuously rewarded, where bad behavior is promoted, where bad behavior is what the society believes should be the norm and not something that should not be promoted. We should ask the government whether some of these major public contractors that they are contracting, be it the Banjul Road project or others, hadn't it been that there are no government contracts, Will these people still be in business? The answer is no. And I will not be ashamed, because I'm going offline on issues of public interest after today. But I will make a classic example and ask a question. Will Guy Enterprise be a profitable company had there not been public contracts or government contracts? I want the president to answer that question. And if his answer is no, he should start asking himself, has this company, with the help of some of my government public officials, taken Gambians for a ride? If again his answer is affirmative and a yes, he should once again say, what should I do to stop it, unless he is part of that whole thing that's happening. If he's not part of it, he should start thinking about how to stop it. So you see where the hate for Nyang Jai has been coming. The cake and the pie that is not theirs and belong to you and me, that we should put into use to have great public infrastructure and public goods and services. That's what the likes of Nyang Jai has been stopping them from eating, and now they have made the likes of Nyang Jai their problem. And Nyang Jai never mind being their problem, but the very people we are trying to enlighten, the very people we're trying to champion for, are now seeing us as their problem, not the people who are exploiting them. So worse than the Stockholm Syndrome, the very people we're trying to help are now turning against the people who are trying to advocate for them. That's one, Mr. President. Mr. President, health and education as infrastructure and services, you need to do better, because we're about to have a lost generation, meaning people who haven't acquired lifelong skills of basic education thanks to the poor education infrastructure and poor service delivery of education. Equally, mortality, especially infant mortality and maternal mortality, mothers dying giving birth, is increasing at an alarming rate. You should ask yourself, is this the country that your father, living in URR in the 60s, lived in, or a better country? And my answer and your answer will be a worse off country. Your father in URR in the 60s lived in a better Gambia than your son and I and yourself are living in 2022. Mr. President, when you wanted to become a president, you wanted to make a difference. And in making a difference, there has to be a sacrifice. And you, Mr. President, are not sacrificing today. Sacrificing in 2022 means austerity, cutting down on government expenditure. Cutting down on government expenditure starts with cutting some of those V8s. Cutting down on government expenditure, cutting down on your daily budget at the State House, Mr. President. Then and only then I will understand that you mean business. But no, Mr. President, you don't mean business. You mean to want to have a good life. Good life at the expense of who? The poor, the vulnerable, and the needy Gambian. The poor Gambian is worse off today, Mr. President. Cost of living has gone way and over and beyond their earning potential. Not powers, potential. So their real earnings have been discounted due to inflation, and they are poorer today than they were even in January 2022. And Mr. President, you have decided to be a spectator in our misery. Now people talk on your behalf via proxy, whilst you fold your hands and watch us. What a sad state, Mr. President, because you're the captain of our ship. You're the pilot of our aircraft. And you have decided to be a passenger, and you have allowed others who are not fit for purpose to take the lead. Gambians lined on a hot sun, both in 2016 and in 2021, to vote for you. Whether we like it or not, you came out the victor. We should accept that you are our president, but equally, you should assume the responsibility of being our president. And the responsibility of being our president is to safeguard our collective interests. The responsibility of being our president is to make sure that what country needs, you're the force to be on the forefront. What country requires, you're the force to lead by example. Like I said, I'm going to sign off after today, and that be it. The country can burn, the country can rot, the country can sink. Ņaņģay will be private citizen Ņaņģay. Why? Bugga naa suma boppa taxul ne bañ naa kenn. And I have reached a point where I am the alpha and omega of my existence, the beginning of me and the end of me. And the beginning of me wants to take care of me and family, and the end of me wants to take care of me and family. I've always had a social orientation and a social mindset, and believing that the greater good is what was worth striving for. But unfortunately, I live in a country where the notion of the greater good doesn't exist. I live in a country whereby selfishness, self-centeredness, egocentrism are the driving force of what people think being successful is all about. I am not cut off from the tree. I don't believe in that. I believe in the collective good. But inasmuch as I believe in the collective good, my society is not ready and doesn't want a collective move towards prosperity. Since society doesn't want a collective move towards prosperity, it will be a futile effort for me to not only introduce but champion something that my society doesn't want. I cannot give people what they don't want. And for the longest, the likes of Ņaņģay and Madi Jobate have been trying to give people what they don't want. What Gambians want is the pimp-prostitute relationship. The Gambians want their government and their politicians to be the pimp, and they love being the prostitute. Sorry for my language, but sometimes one has to be brutally honest and call a spade a spade. The Gambian wants a pimp-prostitute relationship. We want to be taken for a ride by our political class. We've tried to open your eyes. We've tried to show you the way. But yet still, you love to be the battered woman that is managed, controlled, and executed by a pimp. And in this case, our politicians, our bureaucrats are the ones pimping our nation and pimping our people. We have tried to make sure that our people are not being pimped, but that's what they love. And you cannot change, and I cannot change, and Madi Jobate cannot change that. Many a nights I have had long conversations with Madi, and I know how he feels, and I know the pains he has, and what he wants for his country. Nit ki nak mënuloo koo gën a bugga boppam. I cannot be more Christian than the Pope. I cannot be more Gambian than the next Gambian, and I cannot want more for the masses than what the masses want for themselves. So because of that, I have tried. I am not a quitter, but I am a rational person. I'm a rational person who at some point comes to the conclusion that you need to look at things and you decide, hey, am I making an impact? Am I getting and giving people what they want? Well, I don't know whether I'm making an impact, but I know that what I have to offer is not what my society is ready to receive. And what I have to offer is all I can offer Gambia, and I'm not going to change course. But since what I am offering is not what they want, I accept it in good faith, and I will let them look elsewhere for what they want. But since what I have is not what they want, I know what I want for myself. I will revert back to self and take care of self. And that's why for the past 2 days, after reflecting, I decided to write a little piece, and that was my reflection. And my reflection has forced me to come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is to say, thank you everyone for listening to me over the years. Thank you for allowing me space to share my ideas. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to convince you on what I believed in. I have no hard feelings for any Gambian, but I have gratitude for, to have been given the chance to impact you in the way that I believe would have been great for me, for you, for society. But unfortunately, that's not what the collective good of Gambians wanted, and I have accepted it. And it's not a defeat. I say to myself, it was worth trying. I have done all I could to build a mindset that I believe will make our country better. I am just an individual. Maybe my way of thinking is wrong. Maybe my way of thinking is not what is good for Gambia. Maybe my way of thinking is not what the average Gambian want and expect for themselves. But I am not going to change my way of thinking. I will truly be true to myself and remain steadfast to my convictions and core values. Why? Dina len bay ngeen dem ak sen buga man ma dem ak suma buga. I say God bless the Gambia. I say God bless you all. And I hope there is a new crop of Gambians who will come up and feel some of the shoes of people who are deciding to take a back seat. The country needs it. And we should promote divergence. We should promote a marketplace of idea. We should promote tolerance in the public space and public discourse. We should also make sure that we have people who will always be the custodians of the greater good's interest by making sure that when our bureaucrats, our politicians want to step off the line, they bring them back on track. But it was nice interacting with all of you. I am not deactivating my page, 𝒂𝒐𝒊𝒏, but my page will now go more towards fun things that interest me as it relates to expedition, traveling the country, but the country can burn and I care less. And it's not out of anger, it's not out of anything, but it's out of self-preservation. I am a human being, and the first instinct of a human being is to preserve him or herself in terms of his dignity, in terms of his sanity, in terms of his respect. The only reason 𝒂𝒐𝒊𝒏 interacts with Gambians at a broader scale is because I brought myself to the public space to talk to them about issues of national importance whereby I believe we all have a collective interest. So if I sit down to the point people want to insult me, it's because I expose myself to a wider audience. Olof Njaay ne su xar yi ak béy yi bokkaatee gétta nawet a tax. No Gambian is better than the next Gambian. I, Nyang Jai, am not better than anybody else. But dépassé naa fu ma toogee di tontuwante ay nit. And it's not because of where I'm from, but it's because of what I have worked for in my society in furtherance of bettering myself. So there are certain group of Gambians, I, Nyang Jai, will never dignify their utterances, nor bring myself to their level. But we cannot fix this country if we don't do away with hate. We cannot fix this country if we don't do away with envy. We cannot fix this country if we don't do away with jealousy. Every day we talk about a new Gambian. We talk about a new Gambia. We cannot usher in a new Gambia without ushering in a new Gambian. And this new Gambian must be courageous enough, must be bold enough to speak truth to power, not to be envious, not to be jealous, and be ready to die for the truth, to die for the flag, to die for country. And when I say die, I'm not talking about mortal death, but sacrifice. It's that ultimate sacrifice that we lack in us to make our country breathe, to make our country prosper, to make our country develop. It's me, 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 starting with the president to the last Gambian. But unfortunately, the president and his caboose tend to control the cheese, and the people on the bottom of the totem pole don't mind the crumbs. Ñaka fayda rawut lolu. But Nyang Jai has decided no more. Let others do it, and he will be in the bleachers being a spectator. Because I want a peace of mind. I want a quality of life. I want to make sure that I impact meaningfully, first, my family, and second, my society, by extension, my country. I love my country, and I will continue loving my country. But I have gotten to a crossroads whereby I have examined who we are collectively as a people, collectively, and I have decided it's a minefield. It's difficult. It's not an easy one because we don't want it to be easy. We are just like termites. You will see a nice wooden door looking so good, expensive wood, but unfortunately inside of that wood has all been eaten and one day it's going to crumble. That is the Gambia. That is our country. That is our people. Hypocrisy at its height, indifference at its height, selfishness at its height, spite and hatefulness at its height. I can avoid all of that. And the best way to avoid it is to eject myself and become private citizen Jai. And private citizen Jai will have a meaningful life and do what he wants. But what's so sad about private citizen Jai going to its corner is like no man is an island. I may be doing good, but I am part of a society that's not doing good. That's the pain I'm going to sign off with. And that's the guilt I'm going to sign off with. And that's a guilt I'm willing to live with so long as I have a peace of mind. Once again, I thank everybody once again, for those who felt I've offended them over the years, some I can say I'm sorry, but the people that I know have transgressed by cheating the public, by stealing from the public, by taking contracts and not giving back the value that society has given them, I feel no guilt for you, and I am not sorry for anything. And you know what? May God bring the wrath of the suffering of the Gambian on your back for really taking the Gambian for a ride and shortchanging us. Because when we have women dying at childbirth, they are corrupt people who have induced that. When we have students failing exams and failing woefully, we have corrupt people who have induced that. When we have people dying on our roads, we have corrupt contractors and public technocrats and bureaucrats who have induced that. Let all those people rot in hell. And I have no feeling for them, and I have no mercy for them. And may the great God of nation take care of those people who has taken us collectively as a nation for a ride. But for those of us which happens to form the majority, who are just happy and clapping their miserable state of life because you have few contractors and conniving bureaucrats and politicians that you are clapping for to your detriment, may God open your eyes to see that you are nothing but a victim of your circumstance, born out of ignorance and poverty. Ignorance and poverty has deterred our collective stride to fight the menace of corruption and to fight the menace of political dominance in our society. God bless you all. Thank you. And you will be seeing me on the low key, not on the high key anymore. You'll be seeing me maybe showing my pictures at the beach, showing my pictures at the river, doing some gardening here and there, but the rest, it's not for 𝒂𝒑𝒔. I've done my best, and I'm happy with what I've done. I don't own Gambia, and I was asked to champion and advocate for Gambia, and I never took permission to eject myself from the general public discourse. But I hope it will be respected, and I hope people will accept it in good faith, and I'm doing it out of love and preservation of 𝒂𝒑𝒔 first and foremost. Secondly, family. Then I will think of country, and that's why I have taken the ultimate decision to take care of 𝒂𝒑𝒔. And when 𝒂𝒑𝒔 takes care of 𝒂𝒑𝒔, he knows how to live, and he's going to live a pleasant life. God bless you all. Thank you. I love the Gambia, and I love you all, and I pray and hope we all someday have a better Gambia. As emotional as I am, I'm happy to revert back to private citizen 𝒂𝒑𝒔. Thank you.